Yeah, hi. I was hoping to order meat lovers for pickup. Now, does that come with breadsticks? Oh, that's sold separately? Okay, just throw them in. This penultimate episode opened with our main protagonists trying their hand at some Dark Knight cosplay. Well, at least y'all are better than Val Kilmer.
I'll get drive-through.
Nah, of course, this is meant to preview them becoming full-fledged witches, as their final exams had been scheduled. Majrika was of course looking forward to regaining her original body, though surprisingly, she also seemed to have full confidence that the Ojamajo would pass, kind of capping off her subtle character arc throughout the season, of her gaining at least a moniker of respect for her apprentices that she originally named the intrusive witches. Granted, that probably just laid the pressure on them even thicker, acting like your typical kid about to take their college entrance exams, and yet they were still in freaking grade school. Is that how a sleep mask is supposed to work? I'm gonna try it. Okay, that legit killed her. The next day yielded predictable results. Go home, Doremi, you're drunk. Eventually, all of the chaos brought upon by enlarging PNGs, yeah, don't worry, we'll talk about that later, forced the Mahodo to take a little lunch break. However, even that was interrupted by a familiar high note. Della had arrived with the Motas, as apparently the exam wasn't going to be another night event, but rather one that spanned the entire day and across the entire city. Obviously, this couldn't involve Pop, so she took her leave while Ompu arrived, though yeah, I kind of forgot what rank she was. Anyway, the task was to do a good deed and get a thank you from someone while using magic. Obviously, they couldn't cheat their way to passing by using mind control, especially if your anti-curse charm is broken.
Could I get any heavier foreshadowing?
Or forcibly moving vocal cords, Hazuki. Also, are the Motas now just fans of the Ojamajo, considering they made a flag with Doremi's face on it? Well, anyway, they were off and had until sunset to complete their test. And our title character actually got off to a good start after seeing an old man forget his hat at the bus stop. She used a spell to transport to his destination where she would pick it up and handed it back to him. A good clever tactic that met all of the requirements while also hiding her identity as a witch. Too bad this version of Eustace was surprisingly sharp.
Stupid dog! You made me look bad!
Of course, he said this jokingly, but still forced Doremi to retreat without a proper thank you. Meanwhile, Aiko also did a good deed, but more so just because it was the right thing to do. Quick, somebody call Yui! What do you mean she's eating lunch? But yeah, just like Doremi showing off her cleverness, this highlighted the best aspect of Aiko, her morality. Even if she does have a task to complete, Aiko's lawful goodness will always take priority. Too bad Hazuki had no real excuse for messing up on Easy Pass.
I did not think that through!
I mean, yeah, I get that her more innocent nature is what leads her to be one of the more amiable members of the original trio, but even then, this solution was pretty damn obvious. Agree to pick up the garbage, hide and use magic to maybe fill up one bag so it's not too suspicious, and you're done. To me, Hazuki just didn't get quite enough development, as even shown in episode 40 where she only really lucked into passing her exam. Meanwhile, this episode kind of exhibited the redundancy of this character, as Doremi and Aiko already kind of fulfilled the roles of the clever thinker and the good-hearted one, respectively. I would say she needs another season to properly develop, but too bad this is the penultimate episode and there's really nothing after this now, is there? Anyway, to contrast with our original trio showing off their better nature, Ompu tried to complete her task by applying her more negative and selfish beliefs. She tried to give a whiny kid some candy in front of his mom in spite of her objections, which not only was that respectful to the mother's wishes, but he also had a cavity.
Wah, wah, wah.
It's really good subtle writing that shows that in spite of her many talents, Ompu in some ways was probably the worst of the Ojamajo, at least from a moral standpoint, which has started to lead to some karma, hint hint. We then transitioned into a really unimpressive PowerPoint slideshow of the Ojamajo trying to complete their tests. Do I even need to mention how this was an Aoyama episode? Yeah, if the overusage of the pan crop tool didn't make it obvious, then moments like this where the show becomes a slideshow should give away that this was the work of the master animator of frugality. And while his direction isn't necessarily the worst, especially for a more easygoing slice of life anime like this, it really does start to annoy me when Toei keeps bringing him back as an obvious money saver, and he keeps cutting every corner they possibly can. Anyway, after that little presentation, some random kid just came out of nowhere to give Doremi a giant X.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, let's just put whatever that was on the side, because I guess we did need a last-minute conflict for these final 2 episodes, as someone witnessed Doremi and Aiko taking flight on their brooms. And of course, it just had to be... You know, deep down, I think we all knew that Little Miss Nails on the chalkboard here was going to be the final boss. I'll at least spare your ears from this scene, as everyone started to play a literal game of telephone as rumors of witch sightings became the newest hashtag.
Hashtag nice boys.
Not helped by the fact that the Ojamajo were also now of all times getting sloppy with their broom riding. Also, everyone started to get their stories mixed up and blown into insane proportions because a woodpecker was tapping on the phone lines. Yeah, I'll admit, well, I actually do like this as a final conflict of the season, as it was something that they did eventually have to address by the end. It also feels incredibly rushed by cramming into these final 2 episodes. Everything just feels a little too coincidental and happening in rapid tandem rather than having, say, everyone slowly come to the conclusion that there were 4 little witches in their town over the course of the season. I'm absolutely not saying this is the worst example of writing I've ever seen. I just feel like it could have used a little more build-up is all. Well, that and maybe not have it be started by Screech. Also, nice little bit of copyright infringement there, you little brat. I'm pretty sure Yami's not going to take this well. Anyway, the day was nearing an end, as well as the Ojamajo's supply of spheres, with each only having 1 left. Thus, they decided to regroup back in town, but Komi's cousin had gotten lost, and there was no Takumi to help this little guy get out of the river. Thus, in a good display of absolute selflessness, Doremi used her last sphere to save the fox by having it be devoured by a bunch of piranhas. Nah, of course, they dragged it back to land, but it was still cold, so Hazuki and Aiko also used their last spheres to warm it up, and even Oppu joined in by giving it some milk, which I hope that's not coming from a cow, because like cats and dogs, foxes are lactose intolerant, but whatever, that was someone else's problem, as the mother had arrived, and they sent the little one home. Of course, this meant that they had seemingly failed their tests, but... Okay, that's a decent twist. I mean, yeah, it's a little convenient that the fox's thank you could apply to all 4 of them, but it was coming from a heartwarming scene, and at least it doesn't feel rushed unlike certain other plot points in this episode, so I'll give it a pass. Anyway, the Ojamajo then got their final certifications from the queen, including brand new witch crystals. Well, it's either that, or become an amalgamation of a bunch of different magical girl shows. Seriously, can we just get a spin-off of that show within a show? I mean, where else are we going to see Ompu fight Cardcaptor Sakura in a Precure style brawl? But yeah, Ompu had also done something very selfless for a change, as even pointed out by Doremi, which I'm sure means nothing bad is gonna happen from here on out. Anyway, like a true modern journalist, Screech had stirred the pot enough that she managed to generate an overzealous mob that ended up gathering at the Mahodo worrying about the girls. Pop tried her hardest to stop everyone from finding out their secret.
There is no ice! There's never been any ice! Ice is just a myth!
But of course, the episode ended with the worst timing possible. I mean, not the episode itself, I mean more like the Ojamajo coming back at the wrong time. You get what I mean. Slightly rushed final conflicts and Aoyamaisms aside, this is still a really good penultimate episode to the season. As the season closes, it is wise to basically have an episode where we get to see our lead characters' personalities on full display, even if some of them haven't gotten the best development over the season. And while more than a little rushed, the build up to the conflict was at least pretty hilarious with how out of control it became. I'll save a few more of my final thoughts for next time, but I will say this has been a fun little ride taking a look at and analyzing one of the classics of the genre. Let's just get this out of the way. While Aoyama's animation can get very lazy at times, it's not the worst here, and at least for this one, it did fall into so bad it's good territory sometimes. And as long as it's not interfering with the big emotional scenes that they were clearly building for in the next episode that he won't animate, then I see no big issue other than maybe one confusing scene. It certainly doesn't take away from the personalities of the Ojamajo and the great showcases of each of their personalities that we have gotten to know over the course of the season. In the case of the final member Ompu in particular, we got to see both the bad and good sides of her personality, with her learning how her original views of giving into petty and selfish demands literally won't help anyone, and it takes actual selflessness to get an honest thank you out of anyone. Of course, the biggest negative I have with this episode was the kind of rushed final conflict of Screech discovering their secrets that really should have been built up more, though that also might be more of an issue of the season as a whole, which we'll cover more next time. No, and her voice certainly didn't help matters, but I've said enough about that. For now, overall, this is still a very good penultimate episode that also acted as a little reminder of what this season has been all about. What started off as a trio of witch apprentices became a quintet that had to deal with all sorts of ups and downs, and now that they've become full-fledged witches, they now have to face their biggest obstacle yet: the paparazzi. Depending on when we can get a copy of it, we might review last year's Tropical Rouge film next week or so. It should be an interesting one, especially as we're still in the middle of putting together that Tropical Rouge overview, and if anything, it likely will put certain characters more into perspective, considering that it was written by Yoshimi Narita. So look forward to it, and until then though, farewell for now my friends, and Yami is actually mad that someone is stealing his gimmick? Well, how mad is he? Uh-oh. Somebody stop him!